Welcome back to the Midnight Mystery Archive, and we continue our Amy Bradley series. And one of the key components to this series, which is speaking to some of the eyewitnesses who saw Amy the morning of her disappearance, as well as after the fact. And I am joined today by Mr. David Carmichael. David, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. My name is David Carmichael. I am one of the people that saw Amy. It actually was in August 1998.
Great. So that's a good starting point. So give me a little bit of context around where you encountered Amy. What were you there doing for our listeners, just to better understand that encounter?
Okay, so you can understand the whole thing. I had no knowledge anyone was missing. I went to Curaçao to go diving with a buddy of mine, and we picked this one particular site. It's called Porto Marie. And we dove the site actually quite a bit. When I look back, it was more than 8 or 9 times. Now, people have asked me, what date did it actually happen on? I can't tell you because, once again, I didn't know this person was missing. Okay, so let me just get into it. So we were diving, and it was in the afternoon. It was the last dive of the day. So we got out of the water around 4:30. We were cleaning off our equipment. And when I looked down the beach, I saw 3 people walking towards us. There was a girl in the middle, a person on her left, and a person on her right. She wasn't really between them. She was more in front of them. And as she got closer, I said to a buddy of mine, "Hey, do you have some of my gear?" And she heard that I spoke English. Her pace picked up, and she was literally not an arm's length from me, so less than 3 feet. And she was about to say something when this black guy moved into my vision, and he didn't say a word. He just kind of motioned for her to move away. He gave me this stare, and I went like, okay, well, whatever, right? And I just went, that's fine. And off they went together. The 3 of them, so this area is kind of set up for divers. So they went off and they sat in an area where there's a bar. My buddy and I, we sat a little bit further away from the bar. I was looking towards her, and unfortunately, because of the sea noise and everything else, you really can't hear what people are saying unless they're like pretty close to you. So when she was motioned away from me, I noticed a couple of things about her, and the fact that he kind of gave me that stare to stay away made me focus even more. If he hadn't done that, if he had just waved her away and didn't say anything, he hadn't stared at me, I would have deleted the whole thing from my mind. Now, if you look at pictures of Curaçao and Porto Marie today, they look like this magnificent place, right? Not in 1998. 1998, you had to want to go there. You actually had to know where it was. And it's not like it's not a paved road. You sort of have to follow pretty much a goat trail to get there, but not today. Today, it's all paved highway. You can drive in there, and they've turned it into a bit of a tourist attraction. If there was more than 5 people on that beach that day, we would have been the 5. That would have been it. There were the 3 of them, and myself and my buddy. And they sat down at the bar. She sat outwards. She was staring at me all the time. She was staring at me, and she kept rubbing her leg, and I didn't know what that meant. And the 2 men that were with her were talking over the top of her, right? She was kind of like not part of the conversation, and she sort of kept staring at us. And then what happened is my buddy and I decided, that's it. It's time for us to go. We finished our beverage, we packed up our gear, and we left. Okay, don't think much of it. Get an airplane, fly home. All right, let's fast forward to December of that year. I'm watching America's Most Wanted. I never watch America's Most Wanted. Never did, never had, right? But I heard this thing on the trailer. It said, Curaçao. I'll watch that, right? And so I watched it. I get partway. The minute they flashed up the picture, I went like, are you kidding me right now? Like, what the heck, right? That looks like that. Not that looks like that is the girl on the beach in Porto Marie. 100% sure, right? So without saying anything to anyone, I sent an email to my buddy. And I said to him, and I sent a picture, a screen capture of America's Most Wanted. I said, who is this? He responded back in a couple minutes, that's the girl on the beach in Porto Marie.
So your friend had the exact same reaction that you did.
Yep.
So that's really interesting.
Right. And so because I didn't want to tell him, because I didn't want to taint it in case I was fooling myself, right? So that was my litmus test, right? I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't fooling myself into thinking it was her. And then when I started looking at the pictures, I went like, okay, so that's her. Her hair was longer. She wasn't bruised or beaten in any way, shape, or form. She was in a 2-piece, I want to call it a copper kind of gold bikini. That's why we could see like the tattoos around her. And I remember my friend made the comment. He says, "She's a nice girl. Too bad she's got tattoos," because he just didn't like girls with tattoos, right? And that stuck in his mind, right? What stuck in my mind was something different that no one ever talked about. The watch she was wearing. She had this watch, and it was because it was larger than her wrist, and it just kind of caught. It was in the sunlight, so it caught, and I kind of went like, "Okay, it's got a blue face on it, and it's silver, and it's big." Okay, and that sort of stuck in my mind. Like, remember, this is only a few seconds I've got, right? And it's something that I'm not wanting to remember. But you know what they say, you keep repainting that memory. And the more I repaint the memory, the more I can remember. Anyway, so time goes on. Up comes America's Most Wanted. I've sent the email off to my buddy and I go like, okay, this, for sure it's her, right? So I actually sent an email to, I sent an email to America's Most Wanted. Nothing happened. So I'm like, okay, probably they found her. This is good, right? So back then in 1999, it gets rerun again under Unsolved Mysteries, but the same footage.
Yeah.
And I'm going like, come on, guys, give your heads a shake. So I went on and I searched out the Bradley family and I sent them an email. And I said, I told them about my sighting. I told them the dates. I told them everything. And I waited. And it wasn't more than 24 hours when Ron made the initial contact with me. And he didn't ask a whole bunch of questions because I think by this time they were just so numb, right, from everything happening. Right. He went through a whole bunch of questions, not a lot of them, where do you live? Blah, 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 blah. Why were you down there? We were diving. We were doing this. We were doing that. And he said, okay. And that was that. That was the length of the conversation. And then the next day, it was Iva that called. Right. Now the conversation gets more detailed, right?
Sure.
So I'm thinking to myself, I really don't know who the Bradley family is, right? You don't know. You don't know who these people are. I mean, so what I did is I hopped on an airplane, flew myself to Virginia to meet the Bradley family. Because if I was going to get involved with this family, I wanted to make sure that that they were like not squeaky clean, but you don't want to get yourself into a situation that you can't extract yourself from, right? They're like the salt of the earth, right? The nicest people in the world, right? And I'm going like, all right. So she meets me, she takes me to the house, shows me Amy's bedroom, goes all this stuff, and I'm just trying to choke back the tears, right, and all this sort of stuff, right? And she asked me questions, and then I asked her the question, why would she rub her leg? And then Iva told me that that she had had a bicycle accident. She was a young girl, and there was a scar there. And it was perhaps that is what she was wanting me to see, right? Big, and she said that I could answer other questions that nobody knows the answers to, and I won't. We keep them a secret for a reason. And I could answer every single question. And with me, I took my dive log. I could prove that I was on the island of Curaçao. I
Yeah.
could prove everything, right? I wasn't just some guy making up spinning a tall yarn, right? Now, as time goes by, the sighting in itself, if I had known that she was in trouble, or if I knew that she was in trouble, would I help her? 100% I would, right? But you have to also understand that I'm an experienced world traveler. Like, I've traveled all over the world. I've been a globetrotter for 30 years. And I know and I've been to lots of small Caribbean islands. And I know what it's like if you make noise and the police don't like you, it can turn around to you getting blamed for it. It's weird how it works, right? So if she had said, hey, my name's Amy Bradley and I'm missing, blah, 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 my parents need to find me, it would take me like 30 seconds to go up on the internet, find your parents, make a phone call, and then step back and say, hey, I've seen your daughter. Here's a picture of her, whatever, right? People always ask, like, and I've always asked myself, if she had 20 more seconds, what would she have done? Would she have said something? She was about to, right? There's lots of things that go through my mind, and people ask me, how often do I think about this? Every freaking day I think about it. Right. Every day, this memory pops into my head. And of course, you always ask yourself, should play the old shoulda, coulda, and woulda thing. Right. And I've been doing this, I've been doing interviews like this and first person observation is always sometimes the best. Right. I observed this person. This isn't a third party. This is me. Right. I know what I saw. I don't care what anybody else says. We know that from all the records and going back and forth, we know who the two people on the beach were. We know one of them was yellow and the other one was Tom Zek. That's who the two people on the beach were, right? That's not a mystery by now, right? And, that came out in pieces. Now, when the story broke that there was an eyewitness to this, you would think that the reaction from Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines would be a little bit different, but it wasn't. Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines tried to disprove it, right? Which they couldn't, right? I mean, I have gone through this a million times. I have looked at all things. I've gone through my dive log because everybody's asked me, what day was it? And I said, I can get you down to these 3 days, but that's it, right? I can't remember because, memories fade, right? But this is 26 years ago now, right? If my memory serves me right? I was doing this when I was when I was a lot younger, let's just say that. And we'll just leave it at that. What questions do you have for me specifically? I will answer them.
So, one of the questions that I have specifically that I think is really, really interesting is the tattoos, because she has very distinct tattoos. Now, in the moment, you probably are just observing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What was that moment like when you were either told or saw pictures of the tattoos and then reflected back on that sighting on the beach? That had to have been an aha moment.
The tattoos, while my friend didn't like them, were probably the best thing that happened, right?
Yeah.
Because I did catch the navel piercing, I did catch the gecko, I did catch the Taz on the shoulder, and all of that because, remember, she's wearing a bikini. She's just out there on a beach. The reason she's out on that particular beach is because of its isolation, right? But you're right. I looked at it and I'm like, okay, I've seen that tattoo before. Okay, I've seen that tattoo before, and I've seen that navel piercing before, and I've seen the gecko before. And it's like, and then all of a sudden, it's like all of the pieces of the puzzle just start to fall together, and you've got it.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting. One of the other really intriguing parts of your eyewitness sighting is you specifically referenced the fact that one of the men she was with was Alistair Douglas.
Yes.
And it's interesting because he has done some interviews over the last year. He was at least shown over the phone in the Netflix show speaking to his daughter.
Mhm.
And one of the claims that
Yeah.
he has made is that, well, he doesn't like the beach. Yet some of his church work happens on the beach, and your eyewitness sighting is him on the beach. Now, when you see that individual on the beach, what was it physically that made you convinced that's the same guy?
It was his build, it was his features, and the fact that he stared at me. If he hadn't done that, if he had just motioned her away and not turned back around and stared at me, I'd have deleted the memory. He's a big guy. Like, I'm not a big person, right? I'm just not, right? And, like, he's kind of eh, up close, he can look rather menacing, right? And he was close. And I just went like, "Okay, all right, that's fine, that's fine." And that's what locked him into me, and that's what made me look at that. I mean, I honestly, the closer you get to anything, the more the objections are gonna become stronger, right? The closer we get to our target, the sharper the knives are gonna be,
Yeah.
right? And it's just that the more you keep saying, "Yes, yes, yes, this was him," he's gonna push back, "No, no, no, it wasn't." All right, the offer has been made. I know the offer has been made to him, and someone can correct me, to come to the FBI and do another formal interview, right? I think it's been extended to him that they could do that, right?
Yes.
But of course, he refuses. And well, if I wanted to prove my innocence, I would just storm right to that door as quick as I could. Let's just get this over with. And I want this out of my life so I can continue with whatever it is I'm doing. The work of the Lord or whatever it is, you're going to do. But don't profess your innocence, prove your innocence.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point because I tend to agree with what you just said. If I know I've done nothing wrong, I'm going to be chirping like a bird on a sunny spring morning. And the small amount of speaking that he has done has been in a very controlled environment, specifically with an author who is very sympathetic towards him. Outside of that, he has not said a word.
Well, he's doing, he's just reading pre-described or preordained notices that he wants to put out there, right? That's what he wants to do, right? The best thing for him to do would go live one-on-one. But remember, when you go live one-on-one, you don't have time to prep, right? You have to answer that question right away. And it's the rapid fire that would get him. And he would tie himself up in so many places that he wouldn't be able to break the two apart, right? It's sad that he won't do it. I know why he won't do it. I mean, I have never spoken to his daughter. I mean, the Netflix special did a lot to raise the interest of this to lots of people. I mean, she is a missing American girl and she's been gone for a long time now. And people always ask me this question and I'm going to answer it. They always ask me, "Do you think Amy is alive?" The answer is yes, I do. Right? I do. I absolutely do. I have to until someone can prove me otherwise. Right? I wouldn't be doing this for 26 years if I didn't think that we're gonna get to some kind of an answer.
Well, and I think you hit 2 points there that are really important. First is, I agree with you. It's kind of like, until you can tell me otherwise, why would I believe differently, right? I
Right.
agree 100% with that. But I think the other thing is, it's been almost 3 decades. And I spoke to, Judy Maurer the other
Mhm.
day. I spoke to Lori last week, who was on the ship that morning and saw them going up the elevator.
Yes.
And one of the interesting things is that across the 3 of you, you have each hit on this point that it's almost like you feel an obligation to Amy to continue to speak about what you saw, even all of these years later.
It okay, obligation, yes, but if you met the family, you would know why. I guess, I mean, when Iva starts crying, I can't take it. I just can't. It's I don't have anything to the only thing I can relate to what Iva feels is the death of my wife. That's the only thing I can relate to, right? But I can't relate to her daughter being there and a few minutes later not being there and not knowing where she is. Because if they had found Amy's body 48 hours later, the story would take a different turn, but it hasn't because there's nothing. Iva's got nothing to do. She doesn't know what to do, right? And in that event, that's a horrible place to be. You are literally don't know if you're going to go to heaven or if you're going to go to hell. You're basically in purgatory, and there's no way out unless we can get an answer to this, right? This family didn't deserve this. They just didn't. And the thing is, they went on a vacation that was sponsored by I think Ron's insurance company, and coming home without your daughter. I mean, nobody thinks of that.
No, it's one of the things that candidly has kind of compelled me to do this podcast series. So you referenced you saw the America's Most Wanted. My first introduction to Amy's story was the Unsolved Mysteries in '99. And, as I've gotten to know the family, I very much share the same thoughts. There's a reason you want to do this. It's because you see good, genuine people that are hurt, that are just desperate to find their child. And I don't know how you any of us can see that and not feel compelled to wanna do what we can to help them.
Well, we want to help them, and we have been, and there's a core group of us that have been there for those almost 30 years. We've never changed, we've never faltered. The only thing that we don't have in our favor is time. Time for us is not time for us, but time for us is running out. I mean, we're all getting older, right? I mean, Amy was in her 20s, she'll be in her 50s now,
Yeah.
right? Iva's parents are now in their 70s, right? So time is marching on, and in that 26-year void, there's no answer, and we want the answer. And what I've never because my problem is I'm a logical person. One plus one has to equal two. If it doesn't, it just drives me crazy, right? I don't understand that if something really bad had happened to her, why the people that did something that really bad happened to her wouldn't just send us something. I don't care what it is. Let us do bone density DNA. Let us do this. Let us do that. Let us prove it. And now we know we take a different route, right? It's minutes from happy family to sad family, right? Missing a child, right? Now, I've been in like I said, I've been with this for a while. I've walked through it for decades. There are times where we hear nothing, right? And then all of a sudden, it'll take off again. You said your introduction to this was in 1999 with America's Most Wanted, right? And I know there was another one done by another entertainment company. I can't remember their name, and that was in 2009. Trying to remember their name. We went and shot that on the island. But the big one that gave the width of it was Netflix, right?
Yeah.
The Netflix has given it the exposure and the push that it needs, right? The other thing I don't understand is if there's some organization out there, whether it's the FBI or some other three-letter company, and they know the answer, why wouldn't they just tell the Bradleys? Why would they say, "Hey, we'll give you 700 pages of redacted information," but that doesn't tell me anything, you know?
Mm.
Why don't you just tell me what you know? I mean, they can take the hit. I mean, if it was the answer, right? Regardless if it was a bad answer, I mean, yeah, we want to find out, right? I mean, we do. And at this point, we've got lots of we've there's leads that have come in, There's podcasters like yourself that have helped, and that's good because we want to keep the story rolling, right? Uh, like think of Netflix as kind of pushing it off the top of the mountain. We're going to pick up speed as we go down, right? And we're going to just keep this ball rolling. And you know, the FBI needs to go back and maybe reopen things, relook at things, rethink things, like think outside of the box, and look at it from a different angle with a fresh set of eyes. Maybe that's what it needs is a fresh set of eyes to look at it. I know that I'll call us the core group, where we could, for all intents purposes, have tunnel vision, right? We might not be looking wide enough, right? But I said this on the Netflix special. It never got in the Netflix special. But to a degree, I'm naive. I don't believe there's such a thing as pure evil in this world, but I guess there is.
You're right.
That's my naivete, right?
Yeah, but I think you're exactly right. I try to always see the good, but the older I get, the more I have to accept the fact that there is just complete abject evil in this world. You can't avoid it. And I think Amy's case is a perfect example of how that evil can manifest itself. And it can do it in a very short window of time and leave 30 years of pain and sadness along with it.
It can. And I have never dug so deep into human trafficking as I have in the last 2.5 years. Like when I look into how it's done, what they do with these girls and all of this sort of stuff, it's terrible. Now, because we left the beach before Amy did, I have no idea how they got there, right? They could have come by ocean, but there was no boat there. They could have come by vehicle, or they could have walked from another beach over. I have no idea, right? And I'm not, as you mentioned, I'm not the only sighting, right? There's many sightings of Amy, right? The thing is, every single one of those falls into my criteria where when Judy Moyer saw Amy, she didn't know who she was, right? It's not like I'm going to take a picture of this person. It's hard to relate to people in 2026. In 1998, 1999, 2000, smartphones didn't exist. They just weren't, right? I mean, cell phones were just in their infancy. They were just coming up to speed, right? Because people go like, well, why wouldn't you just make a phone call? Like, well, because there weren't any cell phones. There weren't this. There wasn't that, right? And somehow, and that worked in the benefit of bad people, right? Not instant communication, right? Amy didn't deserve it, and we're trying to right a wrong. And we know who the main players are. And as you and I spoke a few minutes ago, if Alistair wants to make a statement, then he can go ahead and make all the statements he wants. But if he wants to prove his innocence, get on a plane, fly to the US, get it over with.
That's exactly right. And he has become some sort of a preacher. I don't know enough of the details to explain it, but as a person of faith, my view has always been that if you're going to profess a faith in a higher power, sometimes that means atoning for things that have happened in your past. And I think one of the things that he should feel compelled to do, as you just said, is just speak. Tell people what he knows and be honest about it.
I know that at one point he had a lot of money that came from somewhere and he couldn't explain where it came from. I mean, I know every dollar I've got where it came from. And I'm sure you do too. But I mean, there's just so many things that just don't make sense. And they're screaming at you to say, hey, look deeper, look deeper, look deeper. The FBI should have looked deeper. They should have kept probing, kept tearing, pull the layers off that onion. At one point, you're going to get to the core, right? Just keep peeling back the onion and we'll get there, right? I think he's part of a bigger machine, and he could have been the entry point into the machine. I don't know, but he definitely knows more than what he's telling. And if he is a man of faith and he does want to go upstairs and not downstairs, now would be the time to start making that known to everyone, right? I mean, every single person out there, we've all done bad stuff in our lives, right? Your character is determined by how you handle it and make it better, right? That's how your character is built, right? And right now, on a character scale of 1 to 0, he ain't even tipping the 1 yet. He's got to he's got to do it. He's got to get out there and he's got to say, hey, you know what? I'm a bad person. I did this and this is what I did. And if he didn't do it, he has to find a way to prove that he didn't, right? We can't paint him with one brush without painting him with the other. Right? We have to give him as much of the for doing it as for not doing it. And I'm sitting here and I'm looking to my right is my dive log and I'm looking at it. And I'm looking at all the days we went to Curaçao, to Porto Marie, and I think back to those days, and it makes me sad actually that I couldn't do more, right? Because I want to do more. I would have found a way to do it. Just that, like I said, I didn't know that this girl was missing. We didn't have you know, you know, we didn't have Amber Alerts back then. It's not like you could send that out, right? And I mean, when you think about it, when Amy went missing, she was an adult, I believe. Yes, she was
23.
23. So she's an adult. She's not a child anymore, right? And she's 23 years old. And the things that went against her, when you think about it, is she was in an environment where she felt safe, but really was she? I mean, everyone in cruise ships, right? They all think they're in a safe environment. Are you? Well, you might want to think twice about that, right? Once said this to someone that's like sleeping with 3,200 of your enemy. Just think of every single person on that cruise ship as an enemy. They're not friends. You're never going to see them again, right? I mean, if Amy and Brad want to go and drink and dance and have fun with other people, sure, they should be allowed to do that. There's nothing wrong with it, right? And they should be allowed to be safe, and they should be allowed to do this, be allowed to do that. Of which, Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines, took no responsibility for that, right?
Not a shred.
Right, but as we've seen with the years going on, like people going missing from cruise ships, assaults happening on cruise ships, bad things happening on cruise ships, it's starting to paint this in a different light, right? It's like, it's not what you think it is, and people have to understand it. The minute that ship goes beyond that 12-mile limit, I believe in the US, you're no longer in the United States of America. You're under the rule of one person, and one person only is the captain of that ship, and he is God. And if he works for a cruise line, guess who he's going to protect? His job, right? So I mean, you kind of got to figure out where all the ducks are and how the ducks line up, right? And it was just a perfect storm, right? That captain couldn't distance himself from that as quick as he could, right? You've all heard the stories, right? The announcement should have been made right away. That ship never should have gone into the dock, right? People also don't realize that that ship was coming into Porto Maria. Pardon me. As it was coming into Curaçao. If Amy had fallen overboard and survived, the swim isn't that far. It's half a kilometer. It's 500 meters. It's a narrow channel.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think people tend not to realize is it's very easy to go on to Google Maps and find where that dock is and see that small channel that leads you into that port. To your point, and I think John Mentar mentioned it in the Netflix show, if she had fallen, we would have found her because that channel is maybe a couple of football fields wide.
Yep.
We're not talking in the big blue ocean here, folks.
No. And you have to understand, to dock that ship takes 45 minutes to an hour, right? It's got to come up that channel. It's got to maneuver itself. It's got to push back and forth, and finally reaches its berth. And even at that point, it's not ready for anyone to go off the ship, right? So, I mean, they had lots of time. She did not fall overboard. We all know that, right? There would have been, I mean, if she had fallen overboard, depending on the prevailing wind, there would have been witness marks against the side of that ship. That's all I'm saying.
And there would have been a whole lot of noise on the way down as well.
Right, there would have been. Someone would have noticed something. Someone would have seen something. So, I mean, it's not as cut and dry as everybody thinks it is. Amy was targeted and taken, right? She just was.
Yep, and it's very hard to argue against that. And the people who try to do it, it's a fool's errand. The information that exists makes it very clear that she was off of that ship. Now, we can debate the hows and the whys behind that, but she did not fall, she did not jump, and there is not a shred of evidence to support either of those.
We went down a real rabbit hole, and one day I just said, you know what, I've had enough of the rabbit hole. I said, she got off the ship. Let's just leave it alone, right? How she got off the ship, don't care. She got off the ship because she hadn't got off the ship. I wouldn't have seen her on a beach in Porto Maria, 1998, in August of 1998. So she got off the ship. I've got her off the ship, right? The next person to see her, and then the next person would have been Hefner, right? He would have been the next guy, right? And I don't know if I believe him or not, not one way or the other. I think I want to. Some of his stories sometimes doesn't hold water for me, but that's okay. Like, I mean, if someone came up to me and I know it, I get it. He says in the Netflix special, it's a story that all the girls tell so they can get money from you and blah, blah, blah. I'd have just said, look, there's a naval ship that's 250 meters from here or half a kilometer or whatever. Walk with me. Let's go. I don't care if they throw me in the brig. At least you'll be alive, right? I don't care, right? It's you know, needs versus wants, right? And, she needed help and he wasn't gonna give it because he was told that this was a story that everybody tells, right?
Yeah.
And, that's the way it is. The Stellaris Hotel now I think is gone. A lot of stuff get burned down, right? There's lots of stuff happening. Let's just say there's a lot of action on the island. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Well, David, I have to tell you, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, share your experience and your insights. And I really am looking forward to releasing this interview
Okay?
because I think it gives an added layer of context that, the Netflix show didn't give your story, that all the other shows that you've appeared on did not give as well. And I think our listeners are really going to value what you have to say.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm glad I got the opportunity to get together with you and, have this conversation.
If you have information about Amy Bradley's disappearance, please contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL FBI or submit a tip at tips.fbi.gov. Tips can be submitted anonymously. The FBI reward is now $100,000. For more on Amy and the family's ongoing search, visit amybradleyismissing.com. There, you can also submit tips as well, and I encourage you to do it. Links to that site, as well as the Amy Alerts petition, are in the show notes. During the full run of this series, 100% of commissions through our Invisaware Personal Safety Partnership go directly to the Bradley family's GoFundMe. Get 10% off your first order using the link invisaware.com/MidnightMysteryArchive, also linked in the show notes, and support the show at no extra cost too by shopping through our Amazon link, also in the show notes and linked on our website homepage. Follow the Midnight Mystery Archive on Substack, X, or join our official Facebook group for updates. Another thing you can do that I would really appreciate is a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, which goes a long way in helping us grow our audience, bring new ears to Amy's case.